Every time you touch me, I think about how much better he'd be, she said casually while I cooked dinner. So I moved out that night. Now she's drunk texting apologies. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The garlic sizzled as it hit the hot olive oil, releasing a scent that, to me, smelled like home. I gave the pan a shake, watching the translucent slivers dance. It was a Thursday, and Thursday was pasta night. Not just any pasta, but her favorite, linguine with clams, a splash of white wine, and a ridiculous amount of fresh parsley. She'd had a shitty day at work. I'd seen it in the tight set of her shoulders when she'd walked in, dumping her bag by the door with a sigh. So, I was deploying the big guns. The good olive oil, the one we brought back from that little market in Tuscany. The expensive clams. I was even toasting the breadcrumbs from scratch. It was a ritual, this cooking. My way of building a fortress around us, brick by brick, meal by meal, against the crap the world threw our way. In 2 years of living together, I'd learned that a good dinner could fix most things. Or at least, I thought I had. My internal monologue was a comfortable, lazy river. She'll love this. The wine is chilled. We can eat on the couch, watch that terrible reality show she pretends to hate, and just be. This weekend, maybe we can finally drive out to the coast. She's been talking about seeing the ocean for months. I glanced over my shoulder. Sarah was curled on the sofa, her back to me, the blue light of her phone washing over her face. She was scrolling, her thumb a steady, hypnotic flicker. She hadn't changed out of her work clothes. I figured she was just decompressing, letting the familiar sounds and smells of the kitchen slowly unwind the day's knots. Babe, dinner's almost ready, I said, my voice cutting through the sound of the simmering sauce. You hungry? A non-committal hum was her only reply, not even a glance. I shrugged it off. Tough day. I turned back to the stove, giving the sauce a final stir. The clams had all popped open. Perfect. I was just about to drain the linguine when her voice cut through the domestic buzz, casual as a weather report. You know what's weird? I smiled slightly, not turning around, assuming she was about to share some ridiculous meme or office gossip. What's that? The pasta water bubbled furiously. I reached for the colander in the sink. Every time you touch me now, she said, her tone flat and observational, still utterly focused on her screen, I think about how much better he'd be at it. The world did not tilt. It did not shatter. It simply stopped. My hand, hovering over the colander, froze. The sizzle of the pan, the roar of the boiling water, it all receded into a distant, muffled hum, as if I'd been plunged underwater. The words hung in the steam-filled air, sharp and grotesque, completely divorced from the scene around them. I slowly turned around. She hadn't moved. The phone was still held aloft, her face bathed in its glow. My voice, when I found it, was strained, a thin wire about to snap. What? She finally looked up, but not at me. Her gaze was somewhere past my shoulder, as if she were explaining a complex but mildly boring concept to a slow child. There was no malice, no guilt, just a detached, clinical assessment. I mean, you're nice. You're comfortable. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible shrug. But Ryan actually knows how to make a woman feel wanted. You know, Ryan. The name was a punch to the gut, knocking the air from my lungs. Ryan, her personal trainer. The guy with the too white smile and the constant posts about optimizing your life. I'd met him once when I picked her up. He'd given me a firm, performative handshake and called me boss. Ryan, I managed to choke out. You're a trainer? Yeah, she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. She finally met my eyes, and for a fleeting second, I saw a flicker of something, not remorse, but impatience. Annoyance that I was forcing her to state the obvious. It's just different. Don't make a big thing out of it. And with that, she looked back down at her phone. The conversation was over. For her. For me, the foundation of the life I had been so carefully, lovingly building had just vaporized. The fortress was gone, and I was standing in the ruins, covered in the dust of my own naivety. The smell of garlic and wine, once so comforting, now felt sickly and cloying. The carefully prepared meal in the pan was just food. A prop in a play that had just ended, abruptly and with brutal finality. I stood there for a full minute, maybe two, just watching her. The casual slope of her shoulders. The way she bit her thumbnail as she scrolled. The complete and utter normalcy of her posture. As if she hadn't just taken a hammer to our entire relationship with a single, offhand comment. Don't make a big thing out of it. Slowly, mechanically, I turned off the burners. The sizzling died. I drained the pasta, the steam rising to fog the window over the sink. I didn't speak. I plated the food. 2 plates. I carried them to the small dining table and set them down. Dinner's ready, I said, my voice a stranger's. She uncurled herself from the couch and came to the table, sliding into her usual chair. She picked up her fork and began to eat. I sat across from her, looking at my own plate. The linguine looked perfect, the clams plump, the parsley bright green. It looked like a photograph from a cookbook. I picked up my fork, pushed the food around, and brought a single, tasteless bite to my mouth. We ate in a silence so profound, so heavy, it felt like a physical presence in the room. The only sound was the clink of her fork against the plate and the deafening echo of her words, playing on a loop inside my shattered head. Every time you touch me, how much better he'd be. The food was ash in my mouth. I managed 3 bites, each one a conscious effort to swallow against a throat tight with a confusion that was rapidly cooling into a hard, clear certainty. Sarah ate with a disturbing normalcy, occasionally glancing at her phone, which she'd placed face up next to her plate. She was waiting for a notification. From him, I realized. The thought was so alien, so repulsive, it felt like discovering a new color, one that hurt to look at. "This is good," she said, not looking at me. It was an automatic response, a social nicety uttered into the void. She didn't mean it. Or maybe she did, and that was worse, that she could compartmentalize so completely, enjoying a meal prepared by the man whose touch she'd just declared inferior. I didn't reply. I just watched her, studying the familiar landscape of her face as if seeing it for the first time. The small scar above her eyebrow from a childhood fall, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. These details, once the map of my affection, were now just data. Neutral information. When she was finished, she took her plate to the sink, rinsed it quickly, and put it in the dishwasher. "I'm beat," she announced, stretching. "Gonna take a shower and crash. You coming to bed soon?" The question was so mundane, so utterly divorced from the nuclear bomb she'd dropped an hour ago, that I almost laughed. A bitter, broken sound lodged itself in my chest. "Every time you touch me." The words echoed, sanitizing any thought of sharing a bed, a shower, a space with her. "I've got some stuff to clean up," I lied, my voice remarkably steady. "I'll be in later." She nodded, already halfway down the hall. "Don't stay up too late." I listened to the shower turn on. The familiar groan of the pipes. That was the soundtrack of our shared life. And now, it was just noise. I stood up, cleared my plate, and dumped the entire, beautiful, uneaten meal into the trash. The clams, the linguine, the toasted breadcrumbs. It felt symbolic, but not in a dramatic way. It was just efficient, getting rid of something that was no longer needed. I didn't go to bed. I sat on the couch, in the spot she had vacated. The cushion was still warm. I stared at the blank, black screen of the television, my mind not racing, but methodically planning. The shock had been a flash fire, burning away the emotion and leaving behind a landscape of cold, hard facts. Fact, she did not respect me. Fact, she was emotionally, and likely physically, entangled with another man. Fact, this was not my home anymore. It was a set, and my part in the play was over. The how of my exit began to arrange itself in my mind with a quiet, terrifying clarity. There would be no yelling, no tearful confrontation, no giving her the satisfaction of seeing me break. She had dismissed me as nice and comfortable. I would show her what true, cold comfort felt like. The comfort of silence. The comfort of absence. When I heard her soft, even breathing from the bedroom, the sound I usually found so soothing, I got up. I went to the hall closet and pulled out my old duffel bag and a stack of empty cardboard boxes I'd kept for a moment like this, I supposed. I started in the living room. I took the books that were mine. The framed photo of us at the lake. I left it. A prop. I took the expensive headphones I'd saved for. I left the throw blanket her mother had knitted. I worked with a numb, surgical precision. In the bathroom, I cleared my shelf. Razor, deodorant, the cologne she said she loved. I didn't spare a glance for her things. They were irrelevant. The bedroom was the final frontier. I stood in the doorway, watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, innocent. The anger tried to bubble up then, a hot, toxic wave, but I forced it down. Anger was an emotion, and emotions were a liability now. I needed to be a ghost. I packed my clothes from the dresser and the closet, moving with the quiet intensity of a thief. I left the sweater she'd always borrowed. I left the t-shirt I slept in. I took my passport, my social security card, the important files from the desk drawer. I was erasing myself, bite by bite. By 3 a.m., the duffel bag and 3 boxes contained the sum total of my life in this apartment. Everything else was either hers or ours, and ours was a concept that had died over a plate of linguine. I loaded the car, the night air cool and sobering on my skin. Each trip to the silent street was a step toward freedom. When the trunk was full, I went back inside one last time. I took a picture of the clean, empty space in the closet where my clothes had been. I took a picture of the bare shelf in the bathroom. I wasn't sure why. Evidence, maybe. Proof that I had been here, and now I was not. Then, I took the key off my ring. The little silver key to this apartment I'd called home. I placed it squarely in the middle of the kitchen counter, on the spotless granite where I had cooked our last meal. I closed the door behind me without a sound. The click of the latch was the quietest, most definitive sound I had ever heard. I didn't go to a hotel. I drove to a 24-hour diner on the other side of town, ordered a coffee I didn't drink, and at 9 a.m. on the dot, I called my boss. "Hey, it's Mark," I said, my voice impressively normal. "I'm dealing with a personal emergency. I need to take the day." Then I called the landlord, Mr. Peterson. "Mr. Peterson, Mark Higgins. I'm calling to formally remove myself from the lease at 214 Maple Drive, effective immediately. My partner, Sarah Reed, will be assuming full financial responsibility from this point forward. I am emailing you a signed letter to that effect as we speak." There was a pause on the other end. "Is everything all right, son?" "Everything is settled," I said, the phrase feeling perfect on my tongue. "Thank you for everything." I hung up. I sat in the diner booth, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, and I waited. I didn't have to wait long. My phone buzzed on the Formica table. "Sarah." I watched it ring, a strange sense of calm settling over me. The screen went dark. A moment later, it lit up again with a voicemail notification. I took a sip of my cold coffee and played it on speaker, the tinny sound barely rising above the clatter of plates. Voicemail 1. Her voice was a mix of confusion and rising panic. "Mark? Where are you? All your stuff is gone. What the hell is going on? The closet is empty. Your shampoo is gone. What is this? Call me back. This isn't funny." I deleted the voicemail. I finished my coffee. The silence in my new, temporary life was no longer heavy. It was light. It was mine. And it was just beginning. The first week was a study in silence. I rented a furnished studio apartment on the opposite side of the city. It was a blank canvas, beige walls, a single window looking out onto a brick wall, a couch that smelled faintly of cleaner. It was perfect. There were no ghosts here, no memories in the corners, no lingering scent of her perfume in the air. The silence was the first gift. In the old apartment, silence had been a tense, waiting thing. Here, it was just quiet, peaceful. I didn't have to listen for the judgment in a sigh or the dismissive tap of a phone screen. I could just be. I didn't block her number. A part of me, the part that was still processing the sheer audacity of her betrayal, needed to see it play out. Leaving the line open wasn't about hope. It was about witnessing the consequences. It was a passive, powerful act of spectatorship. My healing wasn't dramatic. It was procedural, like my packing had been. I found a gym, a no-frills, meat and potatoes place with clanging iron and grunting men, a universe away from Ryan's sleek, perfumed torture chamber. I went every day. The burn in my muscles was a clean pain, one I understood and controlled. It scrubbed the mental static away. I reconnected with friends I'd slowly drifted from during my 2 years with Sarah. We went to a sports bar, ate wings, and laughed about things that had nothing to do with my collapsed life. They didn't ask, and I didn't tell. It was a relief. My internal voice, once a confused and wounded echo of her words, began to change. It became clearer, sharper. She was a weight you didn't know you were carrying. It said one morning as I enjoyed coffee in the quiet of my studio. And now you're free. The text started after about 10 days. The first one was Shrutun Shingdug, tinged with the frustration that I wasn't playing my assigned role. Text 1, from Sarah. Okay, I get it, you're mad. Can we please talk? The landlord is being a dick about the rent. I read it, felt nothing, and put the phone down. I was in the middle of applying for new jobs, ones with better pay and a clearer path forward. My future was a spreadsheet, not a therapy session. The voicemail came 2 weeks later. Her voice was different, shakier, stripped of its casual cruelty. Voicemail 2, her voice was thick, as if she'd been crying. Mark. I saw Ryan at the gym with Sarah. He was doing the same things with her. The same stretches, the same adjustments. He was whispering to her. I was just one of. God, I was so stupid. Please, I need to talk to you. I can't do this alone. A grim smile touched my lips. One of many. The great Ryan. The man who knew how to make a woman feel wanted. Had a conveyor belt of clients. She wasn't special. She was just available. The irony was so perfect it was almost poetic. I didn't call back. I deleted the voicemail and went for a run. The rhythm of my feet on the pavement was a better conversation than anything I could ever have with her. The drunk texts began a few nights later. They were a messy, pathetic cascade, a window into a life unraveling in real time. Text 3, 1:14 a.m. I'm so sorry. I never meant it. You were the best thing I ever had. I was just scared. Ryan is a piece of shit, and I miss you so much it hurts. Text 4, 1:27 a.m. Do you ever think about me? I think about you all the time now. I can't believe I said that to you. It was the worst mistake of my life. Text 5, 1:51 a.m. Please answer me. Just one text. I have no one to talk to. I read them in the clear, sober light of the next morning. There was no satisfaction, only a distant pity, the kind you might feel for a character in a sad movie. Her consequences were no longer my concern. The final text in this phase came a day later, sober and full of a new, grim reality. Text 6, 10:03 a.m. I had to move. I'm in a shitty studio on the other side of town. I can't believe this is my life now. Please answer me. So, she'd lost the apartment. The home I had meticulously built for us, the one she had so carelessly poisoned, was gone. She was now in a box similar to mine, but hers was filled with the rubble of her own choices, while mine was a foundation. I stood at my window, looking at the brick wall. The chain of karma was complete. Ryan had used her and discarded her. She was broke, alone, and living in a place she described as shitty. The scales, in their own brutal way, had been balanced. I felt a chapter close. The spectacle was over. There was nothing left to see. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over the block button. But I paused. A colder, more curious part of me wondered if she had one last, desperate act in her. I decided to wait. The final scene, if it came, would be on my terms, at my doorstep. And I knew exactly what I would say. 2 months to the day after I walked out, I was truly happy. Not the performative, placid happiness of my life with Sarah, but a vibrant, self-sufficient kind. My new job was challenging and paid significantly more. My studio no longer felt temporary. It felt like a sanctuary I had built with my own 2 hands. The silence was a companion, not a void. I was getting ready to meet some friends, the ones I'd reconnected with, for a drink. I was looking forward to it. I just pulled on a jacket when a sound broke the quiet, a hesitant, almost timid knock on my door. It was a foreign sound. No one ever came here. A cold, clear intuition settled over me. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. And there she was. Sarah. She looked diminished. The confident glow she'd always carried was gone, replaced by a pale, washed-out anxiety. She was clutching her phone like a lifeline, her shoulders hunched against the evening chill. She looked small standing in the impersonal hallway of my building. For a moment, I considered not answering, letting her stand there until she gave up. But that would have been an action, a reaction, and she was no longer worthy of either. So, I opened the door. Her eyes widened, a frantic hope flashing in them like a dying light bulb. Mark. God, you look good. She was right. I felt good. The gym, the peace, the lack of emotional drain, it had all physically reshaped me. I didn't smile. I simply leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms, completely relaxed. The picture of a man interrupted, not a man confronted. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice flat and polite, as if she were a stranger asking for directions. The hope in her eyes flickered. My calm was clearly not what she'd prepared for. She'd expected anger, tears, or at least some kind of emotional opening she could claw her way into. I got your address from Jake." She swallowed, her gaze dropping for a second. "I had to see you. I'm so sorry." What I said, it was the biggest mistake of my life. I said nothing. I just watched her, letting the silence press down on her. "Ryan was nothing," she continued, her voice gaining a desperate, wheedling tone. "A lie. He was using me. You're everything. You were always everything." She started to cry then, quiet, pathetic tears that tracked through her makeup. It was a performance, and a poor one. I felt nothing. Not pity, not schadenfreude. It was like watching a sad commercial for a product I would never buy. "Can we just talk?" she pleaded, taking a half step forward. "For a minute? Please." This was it. The moment her casual cruelty met its final, unmovable end. I looked her up and down, not with lust or nostalgia, but with a mild, detached amusement, as if assessing a mildly inconvenient piece of furniture left in the hallway. Then I delivered the line I'd been crafting in my head since the first drunk text. "Is Ryan busy tonight?" I asked, my tone light, almost conversational. The effect was instant and devastating. Her face, already pale, went bone white. Her jaw went slack. She physically recoiled as if I'd slapped her. The reference to her own words, thrown back at her not with rage, but with a mocking, casual precision, shattered the last of her composure. She understood then that I had not just been hurt, I had been listening, and I had remembered. I let the question hang in the air for a beat, letting the full, brutal weight of the irony crush her. Then I finished it. "Because I definitely am." I didn't wait for a reply. There was nothing left to say. I didn't slam the door in a fit of drama. I simply closed it. The sound was soft, firm, and utterly final. A period at the end of a terrible sentence. I stood there for a second listening. I heard a choked sob, then the sound of her footsteps retreating, quickly, down the hall. The ghost of her pathetic expression was already fading from my mind, unimportant and forgotten. I turned away from the door. The silence in my apartment rushed back in, but it was no longer just an absence of sound. It was peaceful. It was full. It was mine. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.